I'm going to make a mixed berry shortcake for my family for dessert tonight. And I'm really frustrated because I bought some organic red raspberries yesterday. And I got them out to use for this, and about 90% of them were moldy already. I will never buy red raspberries from the store again. Never. And you couldn't see any mold from the outside of the container because I looked them over before I bought them. Put them in the refrigerator as soon as I got home, and they're still moldy. So I'm not a happy camper right now. But anyway, I'm going to use some of these organic frozen blueberries. I guess if I get raspberries from the store anymore, I'm just going to buy frozen ones. And then I've got some organic strawberries, frozen strawberries. I'm also going to add, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook this up with some sugar and then thicken it up into kind of like a syrup, like a chunky syrup. And we can then serve it over the shortcake that I'm going to make. And I'll show you how I make that. It's my mother's recipe. Okay, so I've got the red raspberries washed, such as they are. Out of 2 containers, this is all I got. I'll add those. So I'm just going to turn the heat on and let these cook down. I'm going to add some sugar. I don't measure. I think I'm going to start off with probably half a cup of sugar, and once it's cooked down I'll taste it and see if it needs more sugar. Found my 1/4 of a cup measure, and I'll put 2 of those in here. Just sprinkle it in. So I'm going to cook this down, and when it's time to add the thickener, I'll bring you back. Okay, so the berries are boiling, and and I tasted them, and they're perfectly sweet enough. Half a cup of sugar is plenty for this amount of berries. And I've got more frozen berries in the freezer, and so once this cooks down more, and I'm going to thicken it up, I might throw some berries in right at the last minute just to add a little more texture to it. I mean, I could use my immersion blender and blend this up smooth, but that's not really what I want to do. So in order to thicken this up, oh, I just slopped. I'm the sloppiest, messiest cook. Ugh. I am going to be using tapioca starch. And you just use this the same way you use cornstarch. You add it to cold water and then stir it into a hot liquid. I like using tapioca starch because it is, so much corn is GMO these days, and tapioca starch is non-GMO. That's why I like to use it. So I basically put 2 heaping spoons of tapioca starch into this cold water. I'm just stirring it till it's dissolved, and then I'm going to mix it with the berries. If it's not thick enough, then I'll just do this again with less water. I kind of went a little bit crazy on the water, but that's okay. You just drizzle it in and keep stirring, otherwise it'll get lumpy. This is my mother's recipe for strawberry shortcake, and it's very just clean ingredients, very easy recipe, and you cook it in a cast iron skillet. So what you're going to need is 2 cups of flour, there's 2 cups of flour. It's just all-purpose flour. I use organic all-purpose flour. I get it at Walmart. Then you need a half a cup of sugar, and this is organic sugar. That's why it's kind of a tan color and not pure white. And I apologize for the dogs. They've been very barky today. really don't know what comes over them. 4 teaspoons of baking powder, and I use aluminum-free baking powder. Then you're going to need a teaspoon of cinnamon. Now, I always do heaping because I love cinnamon. Cinnamon is very good for you. And then a half a teaspoon of nutmeg. Now nutmeg you don't really want to go overboard on because it's a pretty strong spice. Then you just whisk these dry ingredients together. And then to this mixture you're going to add a half a cup of butter. And now as you know, I cannot do dairy products, so I'm making a substitute. I'm going to be using my organic all vegetable shortening. I got this from Vitacost and I'm very happy with it. Highly recommend it. I will be reordering. Okay, so we've got a half a cup of that. You want to blend this in. If it was butter, you would like cut it in with a pastry cutter, but this is really soft shortening, so I'm just going to mix it in with my spatula here. See, there I go again. Such a messy cook. Always splashing things. And, oh my goodness. Is anybody else out there a messy cook? I try not to be, but just am. Alright, then once this kind of looks like coarse cornmeal, then you add 1 egg. This is a farm fresh egg. I think it was laid like 2 days ago maybe. Add 1 egg, and then 1/3 cup of milk, and I am using unsweetened vanilla almond milk. One-third of a cup. So you just blend this in until it's completely incorporated. Trying not to slop it everywhere. And you want to preheat your oven to 450 degrees. You just stir this until blended. And you don't really want it to be too wet. You kind of want it to resemble biscuit dough. You want everything to be completely incorporated. So you might be tempted to add a little more liquid, but don't, because then it'll be too wet. You won't be happy with it. Then you take a cast iron skillet. I don't know what size this is. Let me see if it says 10, so I'm assuming that means 10-inch. I'm going to take a little bit more of this shortening on a paper towel and just grease the skillet. If you don't have a dairy issue, you can use butter for this. Just pour this into the skillet and you press it all out until it fits completely around. It almost looks like the skillet's going to be too big for this recipe. been a really long time since I've made this recipe, so yeah, I may have to make another batch to fill this skillet up. Yep, I'm going to. Okay, so that's something that you need to know. If you have a 10-inch cast iron skillet, you're going to need to double the recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and whip up another batch of this and get this in the oven, and you bake it for 15 minutes or until it's nice and golden brown and done in the middle, and then you let it cool. And when it's all done and ready to serve, I'll show you what the finished product looks like. I almost forgot to mention that one final step you can do before you put this in the oven is sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon sugar on top. This is not, you don't have to do this, but it adds a nice crunch to the top of the shortcake, and it's just kind of like gilding the lily, as they say. So I think I put 3 or 4 teaspoons on, and it's just cinnamon sugar that I mixed up with my cinnamon and my sugar. So like I said, this goes in the oven 450 degrees for 15 minutes, and we'll be back when we're ready to eat this tonight after supper. Here's the shortcake out of the oven. And here it is all dished up on the plate with the triple berry sauce and a little bit of my dairy-free whipped cream. It sure was tasty.